Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Crystal Confab. Today, we're going to dive into another pink crystal. When people think about pink crystals, rose quartz kind of pushes its way through and hogs the spotlight. But today, we shift that spotlight a little to the right, and we're going to be looking at rhodonite. Now, this is a really interesting crystal, and I know we've got some show and tell for you today. But let's see if we can help you to build an appreciation for another beautiful gift from Mother Earth. I'm joined today with me is Kyle and Nicholas. Gents, thanks so much. Kyle, why do you love this crystal so much?
Well, let's just look at it for starters. Like the beautiful shades of pink with black, like no two pieces of rhodonite are generally the same. Depending on where it comes from in the world, it can be really, really rich and magenta, or it can be really soft pink. And you'll always have, well, not always, but often you'll have these beautiful black inclusions as well. And it adds such character. This is from New South Wales, this piece of rhodonite, really beautiful slab. This is, I think, Brazilian, really deep and rich. I have found upon getting into this podcast, I have given so much of it away. It is a crystal that I give away so much. There's something that I do which is called a crystal reading. And I basically will have a bowl of crystals inspired by something that Adam did years ago, where I have a bowl of crystals at a market or a fair or something. And amongst those crystals, I will intuitively pick for the person and dive into a reading for them. And there are so many people that I meet when they're at a stage in life when they are going through changes and transformations and needing to love themselves, needing to focus on themselves, needing to bring that appreciation to self in. For me, rhodonite helps you to love yourself, appreciate yourself. It helps you to know your gifts so you can bring them into any situation, and it helps you to get rid of the I can't, or it helps you to worry about what you actually can't do or what you can't bring to situations. I find it really great to help you to know your skill level so you don't overextend yourself in things that you don't need to, because there are other people that can do it, right? I find rhodonite allows you to fit in. And it's not about a fitting in thing. It's allowing you to fit in wherever you are meant to be. It allows you to charm your way into situations. It allows you to hold space and take up space and know that you deserve to take up this space. It gives that connection to I can, I will. Why can't I? I find it really encouraging. I find it protective. I find it supportive. And that's why I think I've given so much of it away to these people in their readings, whether they're going through job change, relationship change, personal shifts, whether it's divorcing, whether it's death and rebirth. Rhodonite seems to come up again and again and again. And I think that it speaks to its energy, it speaks to its ability, it speaks to its strength of all of it that it can bring to our situations. I find it has more of a push than maybe rhodochrosite, which you often will see them side by side. You'll see them compared. They have similar names. That rhodo and ite is, I think, not where the similarity ends, but I don't really think they are that similar in the way that they work. I find rhodochrosite so different and so more emotionally based, where I find rhodonite this fiery energy, this more passionate, more driven, more uh, pushy in a way. It helps you to like focus on a goal. It helps you to go after things. It simplifies what you can do so you can actually achieve goals quicker. I find it will allow you to cut out the noise. I can't, and I'm not going to focus on that because that's their problem. They didn't listen to me the first 14 times I talked about it, so I'm not going to tell them anymore. I'm not going to give them that advice anymore. The most loving thing I can do is let them focus on themselves, and I'm going to focus on me. It's so like I'm not going to fit into the parent group at the school drop off. I'm not going to care that people are going to look at me for wearing something different. I'm not going to try and people please in situations that take away from myself. There are many layers to how rhodonite can work, and I think it can bring that self-confidence and self-love in on so many beautiful, beautiful levels. And I think there is someone else here that has a really deep appreciation for rhodonite that can show us some really amazing pieces, but also a depth of appreciation for a mineral that I think Adam and I maybe don't for this specific one.
So that's me. I'm the guilty party, aren't I? Um, I want to start just with a little bit of backstory. I never intended to like rhodonite. Not that I had anything against it. Pink has never been my color. I'm actually quite colorblind, so something's got to be really saturated pink for me to even just take notice of it. Reds, pinks, they're just not something I'm naturally drawn to. And it was one of those crystals that, I got a couple tumbled stones of early on just because I didn't. And it was nice to round that out. And then years later, I circled back around to it and bought myself a really spendy um, strand of beads to wear because I was looking for something that could just help me mitigate some of my experience of anxiety when I had my corporate job. Um, and it seemed to check off all of the boxes. And so I wore it often. And it became like an extension of me. It really did feel second nature to wear this stone. I felt more at ease, more grounded, less likely to, we'll say, spiral in my head. Not that those things didn't happen, just I felt more in control. I felt more like I wasn't kind of losing it. And there was one particular instance where I didn't realize how much rhodonite was working for me until I had to remove it. So it was Leap Day 2012, February 29th, 2012. I will remember the day for the end of time because I, at the time, rode a motorcycle and got hit by a car. And so when it was finally time to like take some x-rays, I had to take my jewelry off. I was wearing a strand, this very strand of rhodonite, and some amethyst. And the moment I had to hand them over to the X-ray tech, and I sat there, just laying, waiting for the machine to work its magic, my heart rate started to quicken, my blood pressure, I could feel it rising, my breathing got shallower. And like, there's nothing about an X-ray that is scary to me. There's nothing different about this room than any other room that I'd been in. And like I'd just been so remarkably lucid the whole time from the ambulance. I called my boss in corporate America to make arrangements for her to take care of my PTO while I was going to be out for an indeterminate amount of time. Like I'm just so shockingly stable when I'm a fairly tightly wound person. And then handing the stone away, this anxiety crept in that I hadn't had a chance to experience all night. And as soon as the tech handed me my beads back, things started to relax. And I thought, oh, yeah, this thing that I like tell people about, it actually works. It works for me too. Sometimes we need the really big reminders. And ever since, I've just grown to appreciate the stone so incredibly deeply. And I love how much character every piece has. No two are the same. I've got like a bunch lined up in front of me. I won't play show and tell with them all, but we see a lot of this material from Madagascar that has these like manganese oxides and like manganese nesosilicates like tephroite. In there, I've got some big blocky crystals. Individual crystals of this are pretty uncommon. This comes from Franklin, New Jersey. I've got a little cluster of some like bubblegum pink ones that come from Peru. But like my pride and joy is this deep, deep, deep red transparent piece that comes from Minas Gerais, Brazil. And it just fits perfectly in the palm of my hand. It follows the crease in my palm, and it's just pure magic. So all of that goes to say that I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what makes this stone so magical, and it has become a stone of emotional resilience and transformation for me. On the one hand, it is grounding and fortifying to our emotional body. Manganese minerals often kind of relate to a sense of emotional grounding, a lot of manganese minerals, particularly manganese silicates. I feel a kind of special affinity with the pericardium meridian. That's the envelope around the heart that protects it from outside stuff so it can do its job. And energetically, it's like a protector for our heart chakra so it can do its job as well. A lot of people do associate it with things like anxiety, nervousness, tension, the ups and downs of life, and kind of takes us to this space of achieving some semblance of self-worth over time. And like when I really sit with that, I noticed that there are a few actions that Rhodonite engages with. First and foremost, it's like an emotional anchor. If we drop the anchor, whatever strong tide, whatever big wave comes through, still happens. It doesn't make that go away, but you don't get swept out to sea with that feeling, with that emotion, with that event. So there I was, literally picking myself up off the ground after getting hit by a car, and I wasn't getting carried away by all the things that I could have. But the moment I surrendered the beads, my mind just immediately went to that anxious place. Um, the next kind of layer to it is that it is super comforting. So it helps us drop the anchor so we can witness those events without getting lost in the minutia of them. But it is also comforting and fortifying in a way that we just need. There are some days, no matter what the crap is that happens in our lives, you just need a day on the couch with a warm blanket and a mug of tea and your furry creature of choice, right? And I feel like Rhodonite is that vibe in crystal form. Some days you just need permission to say, I just need rest. I need space. I need time to regenerate this. And when we allow those two functions to take effect, there's this really subtle magic that happens in the background. So we all have this accretion of beliefs and ideas and behaviors that influences our emotional well-being over time. Rhodonite's primary job is not necessarily taking any of the things out that don't work for us, but it grants a kind of emotional order or efficiency that is really useful. Imagine you come across like a well-worn path of cobblestones. It's, lots of things have come loose and litter's gotten in there, and it's a mess. You're going to trip, you're going to fall. I am not graceful. That's not a great situation for me. What Rhodonite does is it doesn't say, well, let's just remove all of the trash. It says, we can settle these things in so they lock together. So we make a stable foundation. You still have to walk across it, but it is so much easier to do. So by helping us examine where our beliefs come from and how they got there, we can say, oh, well, to unpack that, I need to set it over here with this other thing that it's related to. Or, oh, this makes sense. I kind of learned this behavior from my parents, and that's informed how I felt about every romantic partner or how I perform at work. Or Rhodonite's job isn't to say, well, we're just going to stop doing that. But when we understand how it fits in, we can create stable footing to then do that work on our own. Maybe it's saying, oh, I actually quite like this. And now that I understand it, I can access it more easily. Or we can say, oof, that's something I think I'm really ready to let go of. And along the way, it's going to help us really gain a sense of embodiment. All of those emotions impact our well-being and in every level. Body and mind are related. And if we can take notice of how our psychic, as in of or related to the psyche, the soul, but also the mind, when we understand how our psychic health impacts the rest of our health, we can start to make changes. And it's maybe less tangible than moving something in the world around you, but Rhodonite helps us get a grasp on the things within us so we can start to reassemble our emotional makeup in a way that makes a lot more sense. And ultimately, when we do that, when there's less clutter, we have more bandwidth for better communication. We get clearer perception of ourselves and the world around us. We start to have a little bit more grace for all beings, not just ourselves. Hopefully we start there. But we can also go, oh, wow, this person is just a person. At the end of the day, they are just as human as I am. They're just as fallible as I am. And it generates this sense of compassion that is so real and embodied. So I love this stone. I will love it till the end of time, I think. But it was like quite an accident for me to get there. It was very, very much the antithesis of how I prefer to work, which was prescriptive. These things are happening in my life. I'm going to pick a crystal that matches it. And I just kind of like set it and forget it until I had that really visceral experience of what it was doing for me. All that time behind the scenes, I mean, probably 2 or 3 years behind the scenes. And ever since that moment, I've just been so enamored. And like hindsight is 2020. I picked up a fair bit of Rhodonite over the years without ever acknowledging how much I really loved it. And now when I see an exceptional piece, it's hard to say no.
I love that. I love that. I've noticed him when I was reflecting on some comments that Kyle's made in past episodes, and then how you were saying, Nicholas, that when you went to your corporate job, that was kind of your stability of being able to handle that environment as well. Um, Occasionally, these questions come through, and I know that you know on my social media I do a crystal of the week, and I haven't done it for a few years, but I would once a year do a challenge of a crystal-free week, where the rules are you can't wear your crystals, you can't touch your crystals, and you just you can have them in the room, but you just don't go near them, type of thing. And the reason I wanted to bring this in is because I found that there were some people that almost were forming this codependency on their crystals to help them handle different things rather than them being a support or a friend that kind of helps you out in that type of way. So, when people go, I can't go to work or I can't step out without that crystal or that type of thing, we're kind of relying on that rather than that strength. So I'd love to know from both your experiences, do you feel that we need to maybe have crystal free weeks occasionally or step away from our crystals? Or is that too big an ask and should I be exiled and never come back ever again? What do you reckon, Kyle?
Honestly, I love crystal free time. I think it's really important because I think in any situation, the more you spend any time with anything, the less you're actually aware of your own feelings and connections to things. I think you kind of lose that full awareness, but also you don't see your own healing journey. Like if you don't take that time away, then you can actually see how far you've come. You can see that you're growing. You can see that you've evolved. You're not as anxious as you were. You're not as stressed as you were. Like it actually helps you to see your own progress. For me, like you can see me, I'm a maximalist. I wear lots, but as soon as I finish work, they all come out. Truly, this citrine stays in, and obviously my wedding band, but everything else will come off. And I take off and I refresh myself every single day. Having a full crystal free time generally is when I go on holiday or when I go to the beach. Have that full refresh, give myself that time. And I think it allows you to check in with yourself. It helps you to regulate yourself. And I think that is really, really important.
Yeah, I love what you said there, and I often use the analogy of it's kind of like drinking wine. If you have a couple of wines each day, you don't really notice it too much. But if you don't drink throughout the week and then you have a couple on the weekend, you're a bit more fabulous. So it does really help you to kind of notice that. And I'm kind of like you as well, Kyle. I actually, apart from when we're recording these podcasts at home, have no urge to wear crystals. But as soon as we go out, that's when the regalia goes on. Do you find the same, Nicholas?
I do take very calculated breaks from time to time. It's hard because all of my work that I do outside of the house is somehow mineral related, whether that is scientific or spiritual, consulting, teaching. And then a lot of the work I do inside of the house is also mineral related. So um, I I will carve out moments of time. Maybe that is running all of my errands today without a crystal. And um, it can be a really, really powerful tool of reflection just to see how well am I really handling things. And we can be surprised. We can be surprised in a good way, like, oh, I really don't need to carry my Rhodonite with me every time I interact with the public at large. They're not that scary most days. Um, but also we can go, oh, I thought I'd mastered this, and I really hadn't. There are so many strong arguments that for the efficacy of crystals being tied up in the placebo effect. And if we really want to test that, like take a step away from them and see, like, are you really attaching your agency to an external tool, or are we treating them as allies? Are we allowing them to be catalysts? Because for me, the goal of a crystal is not to do the work so I don't have to. The goal of the crystal is to make it so when I show up to do the work, it is more concise, it is more focused, it is closer to the end goal. And therefore, if I work with one crystal over time, I should be able to take a step back and still reap those benefits. And if I never do that, if I never give myself the chance, I can't tell what that progress looks like. But I had a mentor back in my college era, who was a big fan of taking, like, to complete her little program, her like little correspondence course, you had to spend 1 week without crystals. And for folks in a situation like me, my home and work environment, it's not possible for me to be away from them altogether. But you did have to kind of intentionally say, hey, I'm not holding them, I'm not wearing them, I'm not meditating with them. My job at the museum is a little bit of a different situation, but it's all business there. So I did just that. And it was hard for 18, 19-year-old Nicholas to do that. I don't find it quite as hard these days, and I do kind of relish the moments when I have successes without them there.
Mm. So yeah, I'd really encourage anyone who kind of feels bound to a crystal maybe try having little breaks from it as well. Because I love the crystals you're showing us as well. I've never been really clear. So with a lot, and the ones Kyle was showing us, they're the pink and the black, and then the pendant I'm wearing, it's mainly pink with that little bit of black. Is the pink just a rhodonite, or is the black something else kind of that grows with rhodonite, or is that part of the rhodonite as well? Does that make sense?
It does. And we have a case of two nomenclatures happening at the same time. And we see this in a couple other instances, so I'll make some parallels for us. So rhodonite, the mineral species, is that pink stuff that you see. It can be reddish. I mean, my Broken Hill from New South Wales is actually orangey. They range in color a bit. If you've got a lot of zinc in there, it can lean towards yellow. So that is rhodonite, the species. But then we also have rhodonite, the rock. Just like we have charoite, that fibrous purple violet mineral, and we have the charoite rock, which is a metamorphic body that includes lots of other things. We have serpentine, which is a series of minerals, and then we have serpentinite rocks. So we don't go rhodonite-ite rocks, they're just rhodonite rocks. So oftentimes with bodies like this that are the product of metamorphism, the kind of mixed textures that we see in there are varying grains of rhodonite and quartz, but the quartz is colorless, so we don't really notice it. And then the black minerals are going to be like relatives of stuff like salomoline, romanachite, which are oxides of manganese or manganese and barium. We're going to find tephroite in some of them, which is a nesosilicate. So like this guy up here is from Cornwall. The dark black stuff is a silicate mineral of manganese, but it's an island silicate, so it's a little bit different to the pink stuff. And the fun thing about rhodonite is I spent so much of my time loving it, thinking I knew its chemical formula, and in 2019 it was redefined. So after I'd submitted, final draft of a manuscript to a publisher that listed its chemical formula, yeah, that same year they published new data. And so we often use the simplified chemical formula of manganese silicate, MnSiO3, but it's way more complicated. It's calcium manganese silicate, and sometimes it can be rendered as calcium manganese iron silicate, depending on which part of the spectrum it's in. But it does have small amounts of essential calcium in its structure. So yeah, it's interesting how we get better data. For the sake of argument, though, you can call the whole assembly rhodonite and nobody's going to be mad.
Yeah, amazing. And so I was really intrigued when you're saying you give this when you're doing readings. You're gifting a lot of this out. When you're gifting it out, because I'm really always interested in, okay, we've got our crystal. What are we going to do with it? Do you give any guidance on like just here, have it kind of thing, or what's your tips that come along with that?
I will always give probably more guidance than you need. As far as tumbled stones, for me, it's about having it on your person, as close to where you are going to receive its energy as possible. So in the pocket, in your bra, in somewhere close to your person, in a pouch, something like that. But quite often, I recommend the like getting into your day meditation with Rhodonite is one of my favorite things. I always say 10 minutes in the morning will achieve so much if you can give yourself that space. With a nice little piece of Rhodonite, remind yourself of how good you are, your confidence, what makes you amazing, the things that build that self-love, self-confidence, and ability to like take on the world. By doing that, you can kind of set that intention for the day, sit with it, have it with you, remind yourself of it if maybe it flags a little bit. I also love it for full moon times. Because of its kind of fiery nature, I always love to work with burning on the full moon, whether it be candles or writing and burning. And I find it a really wonderful ally to like see that stuff ignite and disappear, see that crap go away. I find those manganese heart-based stones all have a power of removal and like purging in the best way possible. And so full moon time is always such a powerful time to do so. So a little tumble stone is all you need to do that. Trust and believe. Like my favorite little piece is this tiny little mushroom. It's the cutest little thing. Transformation, mushrooms, right?
I love that. I love that. It's been really interesting listening to you both talk about the energy of it, and this is why I love our confabs, is because Kyle's talking, he finds Rhodonite quite fiery, whereas Nicholas was using words a bit more like it's more grounding, and I'd tend to lean towards Nicholas's aspect of grounding, and I'll expand on that in a moment. But just to remind everyone who's tuning in, is that none of us are right. We're here to have a chat, and you're the extra person who comes in and just has thoughts about it. And we're hoping that we can open up different ways for you to relate to your crystals. Is it fiery? Is it grounding? Is it earthy? It's a pink rock, and it's your relationship with it which will grow and allow you to connect with that energy. But let me talk a little bit more about that grounding. And I find, that this rhodonite kind of contrast. For me, rhodochrosite's got the fiery spark to it. Really great for relationships where maybe, you've been living together for a long time and it's lost that spark. That's where I bring in and want rhodochrosite to bring a bit more of a deeper connection. Where I love rhodonite in relationships, especially romantic ones, but all relationships, is it helps to ground and take some of the fieriness out of it. Now, we've all had these instances in our life where maybe things have got a little bit snappy for a week or two in a relationship. And I know that sometimes to someone who tends to bite their tongue and not say things in the interest of trying to keep the peace, I have lost a frigging plot about a wet towel on the bed. And it wasn't the wet towel on the bed, it was what that meant and the build up and all that type of thing. But if you're finding that you're getting to that in your relationship or that's where you are, Rhodonite's a really good one for helping you to settle that. What I find Rhodonite works really well with is expectations. And whenever there is a conflict in any relationship, regardless of who is right and who is wrong, because we all know you are right, but it's because someone didn't fulfill an expectation that you held. You expected them to hang their wet towel up. You expected them to remember your birthday. You expected them to be home at a certain time, all those different things. And it's really interesting, quite synchronistic, that I was on my bushwalk this morning that I like to go on, and I'm listening to A Course in Miracles at the moment, and they're talking about relationships and the shift of, we often get into relationships going, how can this person complete me and what can they do for me? And the Course of Miracles are talking about, well, how can you actually support the other person to be the best person they can be? And I find Rhodonite really helps us with settling down this expectation and demanding so much of other people, and teaches you how to love them for who they are rather than who you want them to be. Now, this is going to be really significant as we jump into March this year, because on the 2nd of March, we have 3 retrogrades with a final one coming in on the 4th. Now, the major one is Venus retrograde. Now, when we think of Venus, the first word that pops into our head is love. But she is a bit more complex than that. She is to do with probably the best word I find to describe Venus is value. She is about not just your romantic relationship. I find Psyche, the asteroid, is better for that, but all relationships. And when she goes into retrograde, you will find relationships will become more challenging. And this is really a great time to kind of do a cost benefit analysis. And this sounds really clinical of interpersonal relationships. But Venus is the time to go, is this still a relationship that I should have in my life? Are we just friends because we've been friends since high school? Am I just spending lots of time with you because you are my sibling and mum wants us to hang out together and that type of thing? And you may find, whether it be romantic, whether it be family, whether it be colleagues, that all your relationships will become a little bit more testing. Rhodonite could be a really great one just to help ground you in this time to make sure that you don't get too erratic or wild and that you can make these decisions, these cost benefit analysis of relationships so that you can do it from a more grounded place. So I'd really encourage you to wear, carry, meditate with Rhodonite during this time. Now, the other thing that Venus is about style and taste. So, if you're thinking about redecorating your home, if you're going to change your hairstyle or your hair color or any of those types of things, what tends to happen if you do it during a Venus retrograde, once she goes direct again after a couple of months, you're kind of like, I don't know if the orange couch or the bright green mohawk was exactly the right thing to do. So make the changes now. Kyle's like, they're always the right thing to do. But any kind of judgment, even we may tend to spend money a bit recklessly because we're not getting the value we're trying to make ourselves feel better. So just watch your money and watch your relationships during this time. Now, this is accentuated by 3 minor asteroids that are floating around as well. First of all, we have Medusa retrograde. She is all about learning from our mistakes, but during her retrograde, bad mistakes may come back up again. So you're kind of like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I going down that hole? So if you become really quite disciplined in love, in how you act in a relationship and how you deal with your money, this may come back up as well. Money is a big concern for me at this time because also an asteroid called Moni, Mony, which is associated with money, also goes into retrograde. So our access to money may go down. And then Amalthea on the 4th of March, so 2 days later, also goes into retrograde. And she's about infinite fortune, so long-term wealth and that type of thing. So this is going to be a bit of a challenging time. But remember, every retrograde offers lessons for us to learn. So we can, whether it be Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde, or one of these weird blooming asteroids that I bring up, if you feel yourself tested, find the right crystals, look to us for guidance on ones that might work for you, or follow your own intuition and allow Mother Earth to support you as the heavens offer the lessons for you to become the best version of yourself. So Rhodonite for me, I think will be a really great one through the start of March. Remember, when a planet goes into retrograde, it's the 2nd and the 4th of March. These are all happening. It's not on the day. It's a wave, and it's often like a splinter going in. It hurts coming into retrograde, and it hurts coming out of retrograde, and it can kind of settle in between. But lean into the crystal for as long as you need, and I think Rhodonite is a really useful one to use for that. Nicholas, as we kind of wrap up, is there any kind of ways you like to? You've got a lot of Rhodonite. How do you tend to use it a lot, apart from when you're wearing your beads?
So this is one that I wear quite a bit. I keep a large Brazilian piece near the bed as well to help my mind, body, and heart kind of settle in for sleep. I learned a kind of really interesting application for it that's inspired by gemstone medicine in the Chinese medical tradition, which involves like an acupressure point, just kind of above the knob on your wrist on the side of the middle finger or little finger. And if you place a rhodonite there or gently massage that area with rhodonite, it's thought to help us kind of maintain our jing, our essence, and is considered an anti-aging treatment. So things that develop as we age, particularly things affecting the sensory organs, that is a particular use of rhodonite that's used in one one school of stone medicine in the Chinese medical arts that's been in use for generations. So that's another one. But I really like, because for me it is so bodily, so much about my visceral physical experience. Just having it close to me does the job that I'm aiming for it to do.
I think we've all kind of said in one way or another that wearing Rhodonite or having it near us, especially around that heart or chest area, will be a really great way to use this crystal. Well, we could go on talking about Rhodonite for a lot more, but I've now got this sudden urge to go and massage just under my wrist, and I'm going to come back next week looking at least 10 years younger, I'm sure. Thank you very much for joining us on Crystal Confab. We will be back next week for another beautiful confab about another gift of Mother Earth. Until then, take care and blessed be.